What's this thing really about?
Well, absolutely. The Convention of States project is really, we are about influencing and educating state legislators that Article 5, put in by our framer, George Mason, was exactly intended for a day like today with this gigantic, tyrannical government overreach. They put Article 5 in our Constitution to say that when the federal government tries to overstep their bounds, we as a people can use the 10th Amendment as our state sovereignty opportunity to take back the federal government and limit its power.
And so what would Article 5 allow states to do, and what would it take on the state side to make that happen?
Absolutely. Article 5 specifically says that your state can file an application. Now, all these applications must be of the same issue, meaning, let's take, for example, we need 34 states, meaning two-thirds of the states. That's what Article 5 specifies. We need two-thirds of the states, which is 34, to submit an application to have such a convention. And they all must do it under the same premise. And our premise, what we're doing to lead throughout the country and encourage states to lead by using the premise of limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government.
So if you got 34 states that sponsored their own bill to support the convening of a constitutional convention, that under the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution would allow states to come together, and if you've got the minimum of 34, have the power to say, there are limits. We agree that there are going to be these limits in reach and power of the federal government.
Well, before I answer that, I want to correct you, because this is one of the problems that the naysayers and people who are living on fear instead of on faith and our founding documents, they get this misconstrued. It is not a constitutional convention. We don't want to change the founding document of the Constitution at all. The Convention of States, through Article 5, is to propose amendments under the guise of a topic such as limiting the federal government. So I want to make sure that your listeners understand, we are not proposing to redo our Constitution.
Gotcha.
The United States of America, our Constitution, we are the only country in the world in the last 237 years who has had one single Constitution. That is how amazing this document is. And our founders and framers, this isn't what their wisdom was. It wasn't random. It was divinely inspired, and we know this because it has withstood this test of time. And so what happens as a result is that if we get those 34 states who file that application, we get to call a convention of states. We get to get together and say, how are we, under these rules, and we have to put together rules that everybody agrees to, one state, one vote, just as the Congress is, one state, one vote. And you say, okay, maybe we want to do a balanced budget amendment. One of our people in the United States, our big issue is this runaway spending. President Barack Obama has created a debt that in 5 years is more than every single American president combined. That is beyond shameful. That is actually morally reprehensible as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of my fellow citizens and volunteers with what our project is doing feel the exact same way. It is our obligation not to burden our children. It's anti-constitutional. It's anti-Christian to be this irresponsible. And so a convention of states, under the guise of limiting the power of the federal government, would give us an opportunity. Maybe we can agree upon only one amendment at the first sitting. But maybe, Chris, we can come up with 2 or 3, like a balanced budget. Maybe we put term limits in there, because I got to be honest with you, the Harry Reids of the world who couldn't get a regular job, he has no business making legislation when he doesn't even understand his constituents and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
He's making decisions that are totally out of bounds with the way Americans think today.
Yeah, amen. Many of us would agree with that. And it's not just Democrats. There are some Republicans in there as well.
Absolutely.
They're lifetime
Absolutely.
politicians, and it's a part of the problem. And they work more towards getting reelected and keeping the job and the pay and the benefits than they do representing the folks that they supposedly represent. Yeah, many of us have had it with that. Now, if the states were to get together, if they would propose these amendments to the Constitution,
yes.
and after those are proposed, how would they pass? Would they pass via the state vote, or would it again be up to the House and the Senate to approve those? How does that work?
Okay, I just have to say, our framers of our Constitution were brilliant because they believed that the power of the United States of America was with the states' sovereignty alone, and the people of those states to focus on what they knew was their key liberty to enhance their businesses. And so what Article 5 specifies is that once those amendments are kind of finalized, then those states will take all 50, because there will be 50 representatives at a convention of states. Those states will take those amendments back to their state houses, and at that point they get to vote on them, both their state house and the state senate. And we will need Article 5 specifies we need a 3/4 ratification, which means at that point, for an amendment to actually become part of the Constitution, we need 38 states to pass that.
What's the status of the project, and how realistic, in your opinion, is this approach?
Well, right now the Convention of States project actually has state directors from 36 states in our country, and more coming on every day. And in fact, we actually just have a new California director. The realism is the states like California and New York that have a super majority with a primarily Democrat legislator. You kind of have to write those states off because it is highly unlikely. So when you look at the scheme of things, there are 40 states in the country that have either a kind of moderate state legislature, or what do we have? 32 that are primarily Republican-driven state legislators right now. We have a very good chance of making some hay while the sun shines on this project, and I believe there are enough Americans who want action, Chris. We are not traditionally people who sit on our laurels waiting for something to happen, as you've seen throughout our history. I mean, we are people that want to get it done, get on with our lives. We've got families, we've got churches, we've got things we volunteer for, we've got businesses to run. But what we want to do is we want to free up this country to succeed. And when you've got people that are willfully making our country and the process of existing and living and our small businesses, they are willfully putting us down by burdensome regulations, by crippling debt. It's time to act, and we've got people coming on every single day. We would love to have people involved at the state level, and Texas, I want to let your listening audience know, we already have a prime sponsor in Mr. Alan Fletcher, State Representative Alan Fletcher, who's down out of Houston. He has agreed to be our prime sponsor. We are currently working with him. We've got several other state legislators who've asked to remain nameless, but they are coming on board as secondary sponsors.
If people like the idea, what do they need to do? How can people become involved?
Absolutely. We want everybody. We don't care what your background is. We don't care what your political status is. If you love liberty, if you love Texas and the freedom we have here, if you want a future for your children and grandchildren, we want you to volunteer and help us get the word out and help us contact local state legislators. Go to our website, which is www.conventionofstates.com, and send an email, fill out a volunteer application form, send it in. Those get processed within 24 hours, so anybody in your listening audience that goes to that website today, they will be contacted by me or one of our state executive team members within the next 24 to 36 hours to get them involved. We are